Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Homeschool Live. Today, I am so excited to be here with Beverly Adams Gordon, and she has been homeschooling for over 28 years. She has so much wisdom and experience and has created Spelling Power, which many of you I know are using within your homeschool. And if you have not yet heard of Spelling Power, you are going to be so excited to hear about this new and innovative approach to teaching spelling in your homeschooling. It is like no other program I've ever seen or used. And I am so excited to hear from Beverly about this incredible program. Thank you so much for joining me today, Beverly.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
So, as I mentioned, I use Spelling Power. I've been using it for the past 5 years, and it has been a lifesaver in our homeschool. And I was just so excited when I was introduced to it. Can you tell us what inspired you to begin creating Spelling Power?
Well, first of all, as a younger person, I was a terrible speller. I always had trouble in school with spelling, and multiple teachers tried to help me with spelling, but I was taught to read with a sight reading method and never learned phonics until graduate school. And so once I learned phonics, then it helped me with my own spelling. And then when we started homeschooling, my two older daughters, the first thing I did was test them with an achievement test to find out where I needed to start working with them and so forth. And my younger of the two um, kids that I had then was going into sixth grade, and according to the test, spelling. The first thing I did was teach her phonics because it helped me so much. And when I did that, it just helped her. Some words are only supposed to be spelled one way, spelled the same way every time. Before that, she would spell a word multiple ways in a little story she had written or something. So, I wanted to help her. And I went to seminars on teaching spelling and for in-service training and so forth. And um, one program, a friend of mine said, "You've got to go to this workshop because the lady's going to teach us about helping kids that are just not getting spelling." And it was about using the visual clues, drawing boxes around the letters so they get the shape of the letter and so forth. And so I bought a program for my daughter that had that kind of writing, but to give her the words she needed to learn, it was like a second grade book. But she really wanted to improve her spelling, so she put up with the large size spaces for writing the words and drawing the boxes around them. But by December, we realized it wasn't really helping her. And about the second year we started homeschooling, she was then spelling on the second grade level and reading on a high school. And she was a very fast reader. And I was talking to one of my professors, and she said, "Well, she probably doesn't read every word. She just reads in phrases, which is what we try to teach them." So then at that time, Washington State said all elementary school teachers have to earn a master's degree by a certain date. Um, and so I decided to start working on that while I was homeschooling, and I did my research on teaching spelling. And every time I learned something new, I would kind of add it to Angie's spelling program. And she improved dramatically over a couple of years. And um, the gal that had designed the game Rummy Roots said, "What did you do to help Angie so much? I need something for my son. Can't you write up what you did?" So it kind of, with my thesis and her prodding to make it something a homeschooler could use themselves, I basically wrote Spelling Power and let her try it. And she said she loved it so much. She said, "You should come in our booth for the homeschool show, Washington State Homeschool Show." And I said, "But I don't have any copies of the book." And she said, "Well, just photocopy them. Homeschoolers don't care. They just want good stuff." And this was early on in homeschooling. It was 1993. And so I went to the Kinko's and had 12 copies printed, and I sold 24. So that was kind of the starting of the book in a short synopsis. But Angie's a very competent speller today, so it works.
That's incredible. I just love that you paired it with what you were learning to receive your master's, as well as what your daughter Angie needed, that it was actually birthed out of a need for an actual homeschooler. And you can tell when you're using this that it was written with homeschoolers in mind, because it has a completely different and unique approach, and a way that I've never seen in any other spelling program anywhere else. Could you maybe talk a little bit about the approach that you use? Somebody has a struggling learner and they're used to giving their child a list, 10, 20 words, and have them memorize it and have a test at the end of the week. That's not how Spelling Power works. How does it work?
No, not at all. Yeah, we don't believe in take the test on Friday and get a new list on Monday, whether you learn the words or not. With Spelling Power, it's a totally multi-sensory program. In the lingo, they call it simultaneously multi-sensory, meaning we're doing multiple things at one time, which we store information in all places we store that information, the easier it is to pull it back out when we need it. So multi-sensory, that's why we want to do that, because there's the hearing center and the touch center, and which is closer to the sense of smell than it is to the kinesthetic. So we actually teach using the visual, kinetic or movement, the sense of touch, and the sense of sound in all of our steps in the pretesting and what we call the 10-step study sheet. Basically, Spelling Power, first of all, is designed for children who have already had a basic phonics instruction. We don't review the sounds of we start really with a third grader. By then, their reading has just taken off and their spelling lags behind. And that's normal with reading. And that's when you start to really need a separate spelling program. So what we do is we spend 15 minutes a day on spelling. The first 5 minutes, we pre-test from an organized word list. The next 5 minutes, we study the words they misspelled, and only the words they misspelled. The students really love giving credit for what they already know. And then they spend the final 5 minutes doing skill building activities. And we try to make those multisensory and quick and to the point. That's one research study found that spending 3 5-minute sessions of doing it's the same every day, but the words are different and it's short and sweet. Struggling spellers really appreciate not being given 50 words, because that just overwhelms them. How can I learn these? What we're looking for is 2 or 3 words that they misspell in the pretest. So do you want me to get into details of how each of those 5 minutes works?
Absolutely.
The
Absolutely.
pretesting, we call it pretesting. Well, actually, the first thing you do when you get Spelling Power is give the placement test. There's a three step placement process. So every student starts in Spelling Power where they need to be on the organized word lists, which are the 5,000 most frequently used words. And they're divided into 11 levels based on frequency. So they're not, level A is not first grade. It's the 200 most frequently used words. And I did it that way because it helps the student get fast results and they see improvement in their own daily writing because they're working with the most frequently used words. And so each of the 11 levels is divided into 47 possible groups based on spelling, phonetic principles and spelling rules. And at the lower levels, there's less words on the list, just because we assume they're younger students. And at the highest levels, there's more words on the list. But what we're doing when we do the daily test, pretesting, is we start out by saying the rule, which is a rule like, usually the sound of A is spelled A as in cat. And that's the group 1 rule. And it's always that rule for group 1, no matter what level you're on. And then a student writes that rule on the top of their testing form. And then you start testing the words. The teacher or tutor says the word, uses it in the sentence, and then says the word. And we teach the students to wait until you've said the sentence because of those homonyms. And then the student writes the word, and we always say the best way you know how. And we emphasize that this is not a test they're getting graded on. This is only to find out what words they need to learn. And so then after the student has written it, he says the word, and then the tutor says the word and spells it back to him letter by letter as he checks his work. If he spelled it incorrectly, I like him to cross out the word, and then you help them record the correct spelling of the word under words to learn in the testing form. We have testing forms in 4 sizes of lines that comes with the book on the online. It used to be printed in the book and you had to photocopy them, but now you can go online and print them out. Or I found out a lot of parents are curriculum creators, and so they don't really like to make all these fun things. And so we started making those available already printed. So we have the printed ones only come in 3 sizes of lines. There's the Blue Student Record Book, which is about the same as a wide rule paper. And then the green is College Rule, and those both have dashed midlines. And then the yellow is no dash midline, but College Rule. And so you choose the student record book by the size of your student's handwriting. And again, that's because your student may be developmentally an 8th grader, but if he's only spelling on the 3rd grade level, his word list needs to fit where he is at. But that doesn't mean he needs primary writing lines. He still may write like a 8th grader. So everything in spelling power, you choose it to tailor it to your student. The form that I was talking about is in the student record book. I don't know if you can see it from here, but it's just has a place to write the rule, and then it has a place to test the word and a place to record the correct spelling. And so you test like that for 5 minutes, even if you haven't finished the entire word list or the groups list, because every time they have to stop to record the correct spelling when they missed a word, it slows down how far you get. And what we're really looking for is 2 or 3 words a day. If a student can master 2 or 3 words a day, he can really improve his spelling quickly. And so the next day you start out where you left off the day before, and well, actually, you start off by reading the rule again and then retesting the words they missed the day before.
Okay. I was going to ask because that's what I do.
And
If
then you
they
pick up
get
where
them
you left
wrong,
off.
we
You
go
get
over those ones again.
correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So the word will stay on their list until they spell it correctly at least once.
Okay.
And that's like a 24-hour check. Generally, it's a 24-hour check. Mondays, it may be 3 days, but we're looking for the short-term retention of the spelling of the word. And the groups are organized that review tests come up automatically about every 5 groups. So,
Yes.
about depending on the student, when they first start the program, they may start at a level that they're kind of in between on, and the first 5 groups are the easiest groups in spelling power.
Yeah.
They're the short vowel sounds. So generally, students just starting the program can go pretty fast through those first 5 groups. It's when you start getting into the diphthongs and all that, adding suffixes, that kind of thing, that you start getting bogged down a little bit more and you don't make it through a whole list. But once they've determined what words they need to study, then we go on to using what we call the 10-step study sheet to study the words. And if you've kept it to 2 or 3 words, that generally can be done in 5 minutes by most students. My 3rd child, it was a struggle to get her to do 2 words in 5 minutes just because she's ADHD. And it was always, okay, now let's do the next word. So, but most students can do it in the 5 minutes. And then that's followed by skill building activities. The 10-step study sheet has little check marks. A lot of parents say, well, that's kind of silly to have a form. I'll just tell them what steps to do to study the word. And they're the most, based on research, they're the most useful ways to study a word that help children retrain the spelling. The problem is you tell a child how to study a word and they tend to forget the steps and they want to be done, so they rush through it. And I find with the checklist, as adults, we are kind of bored with the checklist, checking things off in boxes and stuff. But especially the younger kids like to check off. It gives them a feeling of accomplishing something. And so don't judge it by your adult eyes, judge it by how your children react to it. But I also did a study as part of my master's on the ways you present the 10 steps to studying a word. And I found great difference. I actually wrote a whole article about that that's available on spellingpower.com on what research says about the way you study the word. And the forms actually greatly improve the retention of the students. So they do work, and then the 3rd step is to study the words, doing skill building activities. Sometimes we're studying the skill, sometimes doing drill on the words that they needed to study. And so with the book, and in the book, we have a large selection of skill building activities you can choose from. And there's an index that starts on like 205 that you can look up the group rule number and it will tell you what activity to choose from either in the book, the online resources, or in what we call, it's way over here, the activity task card box. Like I said, I love making curriculum things, and I found out not everybody likes to do that. And so I started making things to make life easier for the homeschool moms. And it actually was a blessing to me too, because my youngest child is 17 and a half years younger than the next one up. So I started homeschooling over again with her, and she was basically an only child, and creating something for one child, and they get it, and it takes me an hour to make it. It takes them 15 minutes to get it, and gee, thanks, mom. And then I have this thing that I created and I'm so proud of, but the kid only needs to do it once. So, and that's true for a lot of homeschool moms, and maybe their
Absolutely.
interest is in math and not in teaching spelling. And so we made the activity task card box available in 1994. And what it is each card, there's 365 cards, and the cards are divided into four developmental levels. And then it's also divided up into five um, types of activities, either drill activities, a skill builder, a writing prompt, so they're transferring the words into their daily writing, dictionary skills, and homonyms, and more. And the developmental levels are color coded, so you can tell a child, and sometimes this happens, choose any pink card. So, just if you haven't had time to connect it directly to what they're doing, you can't go wrong. They'll need the skill no matter what card they choose eventually. So I know there have been times when I did that myself, but generally I will look over her spelling notebook and know what's coming up and try to find a skill builder before she's coming to that group. And so anyway, we have those as extras, because actually the Spelling Power manual and the online resources has activities, has the forms you can print out yourself. And my idea with the first edition of the book was everything you need is in this one book. But like I said, not everybody likes to make the games that I suggested. so we just have added them over time. And we
Well, I
listen
feel
to
like
the
you have
parents.
thought of
We
everything.
get feedback. It's very comprehensive, and it's so different than the approach that we were taught with, that it is a little challenging at first for people. Um, I've written in the book, people say, why is this book so big? It's overwhelming. I can't read that whole book. Well, you don't have to read the whole book, because a good share of it is the word list, because they're all there for all the levels in one book. And then another good share of it is the section on skill building activities. But we start out with a quick start introduction. And I generally suggest people read it all the way through. It takes an hour or so for most readers, and then to go back and read it, apply it. And we also have a video on we call it the teacher's resource site. It's for anybody that has the book can get access to it. They just have to register their book online. They pick a username and password, and then they can get it 24/7. And there is a video of me in my younger days that goes through all the steps too. So we cover the different learning styles of the parents too. And then we have our user helpline that's available to all of our Spelling Power users. That I answer the phone myself. And if you have a child that has a special need, or you're having a particular challenge with a child, you can call me up and I will help you with it. So, and that's my favorite thing to do.
I love that. I
So
feel
that's
like, I feel like I really want to tap into your years of homeschooling. For those tuning in, Beverly, she has created an incredible program called Spelling Power, and there's so much to it. There's a completely different approach to teaching spelling in your homeschool. And you would absolutely love it if your child is struggling with learning how to spell. And this was birthed from her teaching her daughter and from her experience in education. But Beverly, you homeschooled. And can you possibly share with us what you see as one of the biggest challenges in homeschooling that students face today?
Well, I think there has become so many programs that are really school at home and not home education. I'm My concern today for kids is all this stuff that's going on in the government schools and even in private Christian schools. And as homeschoolers, we need to be looking at the methods we use. We're a family. We're not a classroom where everybody has to sit in a row and wait their turn to speak and raise their hand. They're your children. And I know for our family, we were only going to homeschool for 2 years because the local Christian school ended at sixth grade. And our entrance into the public school with our older daughter was a bit of a disaster. And we pulled her out by the middle of the seventh grade year. And our intent was only to homeschool until they were old enough to go to the Christian high school of the area that sent buses out into the suburbs where we lived, suburb of Seattle. And we loved it so much that we stayed homeschooling the older girls all the way through high school. And then we adopted our baby girl, and she was homeschooled from birth and through high school. And all three girls have gone on to successful careers, and I'm very proud of them all. But the challenge is trying not to bring the public school or their approaches to teaching into your home, but to make your home a center of love and education. And I think that's what we need for our kids in this country. There's such a lack of contact with family. And I just see it as what's tearing down so much of our country. And when you watch the news, you see all this stuff, and you see, what about the morals? Well, they're not getting them. They kicked God out of school. So, if you're a Christian homeschooler, that's one of the things you want to include. But even if you're not a Christian homeschooler, if you're just homeschooling, you can share your values with your child, and um, you can keep teaching something until they know it too. That's it's not a school; it's your home, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges new homeschoolers face is to getting to that point where they see, I don't have to do it like the school. I don't have to feel inadequate because you have something way better than the schools have. You have your love for your child. And I think every parent goes out of their way to find the solution to whatever learning challenges their children are having. And the schools, it's not their child. There's good teachers in the schools, but sometimes it's just not enough. And
Right.
I taught in Montessori schools, so we had the same students for 3 years. And it makes a huge difference because you really know where that student is academically. And we get the same thing with homeschooling. We know what part of learning math is going to be a challenge for our child, and what we need to prepare them for and where they are exactly. And I think that it's a real answer for our country today.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of new homeschoolers that aren't really homeschooling. They're using
Yeah.
online school. It's just public school at home. And
Right.
it's a good way to start if you're a little nervous about homeschooling, but you need to start branching off and get becoming a real homeschool every vacation we went on from the time we started homeschooling has been educational. And with the youngest daughter, when I would do homeschool conferences around the country, I would always plan an extra day in that city, and we'd go to the museum, the art museum, the science
Aw.
museum, which was her favorite, and see the city. So I just homeschooling was part of everything we did. Her time with her dad was watching old movies. She had kind of an interest in the movies, and he started her out with the very first Edison's um, uh, movie. It was done by Edison, and they went up to about the 1940s. Well, she's going to be 30 this year, and when she's still single, when she comes home to visit, they are still working on going through chronologically
Wow.
movies and films. So the relationship, just because of the time and the age that we started homeschooling, our younger daughter's relationship with her dad is so close. And because by the time she came along, um, spelling power had grown so much that we actually couldn't have him working outside the home. I had back surgery and so forth too. So I needed him to do the shipping and so forth. So he left the post office. And so most of her life, dad was home and helping homeschool. He taught her Latin in high school. And, you know, it just became the whole family. When my middle daughter was here, her husband was stationed in Japan, and she lived with us while he was there with her little girl. And I taught her daughter phonics, and she taught Marina art. So we were trading off subjects, and it's just a real joy
And
to
that is
homeschool.
real
And I think
homeschooling.
the
I mean,
challenge,
absolutely. Just
yes, I
using
think
the
so. And
resources that we have. I think it's
yeah,
beautiful.
my mother and father moved to this little town where we live. We bought an old hotel that's
Wow.
21,000 square feet, and we had to renovate the whole thing. We took it down to the studs, took out the plaster and stuff, all
Wow.
new heating, all that stuff. And my mom and dad came to the little town too, so my dad could act as the GC or general contractor for our projects. And so my daughter was able to grow up with grandma and grandpa in the home, and she followed around my dad, and she knows how to do all kinds of construction-y stuff, you know. He taught her to caulk, and so she's really good at that. And my mom was around, and my mom's a great cook, so she taught her to cook. You know, so everybody in the family, the older sisters being so much older, contributed to the education of what we call the baby. She's 30, but we still call her the baby. And I think thinking of homeschooling as an adventure
Yeah.
helps the mom, uh, and to realize that you don't have to know what you're teaching to teach
Right.
it. Yeah, my oldest daughter wanted to be a chef from the time she was 13.
Mm.
I prefer sewing to cleaning and cooking. I mean, that's just me. And my oldest daughter liked to cook. And I learned more about cooking from her and
Wow.
her reports, the foods of colonial America. She wrote
Oh,
that report
wow.
once.
I love it.
The next one was an artist, and she'd always write about the art of the jazz age, things like
Wow.
that. And the is a musician, and she's a professional musician. So now,
Wow.
and that's what her degree in is in music, pipe organ performance, and music. But uh, I really didn't know much about music. But what I learned sitting in the lesson when she was having piano lessons and harp lessons and voice lessons, um, I learned so much homeschooling, and now I have nobody to homeschool. And
Aw.
so I get sometimes I wish I did because I learned so many different things based
Yeah.
on their interests, not on my own.
Great.
You know.
Well,
So
Beverly, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think you are an inspiration to so many new homeschoolers that have come on board the past few years, and those of us who've been doing it even for over a decade or so, because you came from the educational background, but then you just transformed everything for homeschooling. And then throughout your journey, you learned so much and you were able to adapt to your children's interests and to what the Lord brought your way. And I just think it's so inspiring and so encouraging. And I just know so many people watching are being inspired by this. So thank you so much. And I also want to thank you for Spelling Power. Like I said, it's been a blessing in our home. It's completely a new approach, and it transformed spelling, how we teach spelling
it
in our
changes
home.
the
And I'm so
attitude
thankful.
about the lessons.
Absolutely. It
It
absolutely
changes
does.
attitudes for the students, and those that have been struggling and feel like they'll never learn it. There's a lot of little things built into it to build them up again, because a student who feels positive about what they're doing is more
Yes,
likely to learn it than one that feels browbeaten by it. So the first
absolutely.
5 groups are the easiest. The reviewers are at the top of those lists. You know, there's little things like that built into the list, but it's automatic for you. You don't have to keep track of it or anything, because
Right.
this record book keeps track of it where they are.
And there's so many aspects
Yeah.
of Spelling Power that are different than other programs. Um, I could, we could talk about them for hours, but one of my favorites is that it's not mastery based, but it's spiral approach, and that you do have those review words in there just to make sure the kids know them. And I feel like it definitely helps to build
Mm-hmm.
confidence. And, the book definitely promotes is the children only have to learn the words they don't know, and that also builds confidence. So I just think that everything that you have thrown into this book has meaning and purpose, and it's so powerful, and we're so thankful for everything you've done.
It's
Can you
all
share with our viewers today and our listeners how they can get their hands on the Spelling Power program?
Well, Spelling Power is sold by a number of vendors that are popular for homeschoolers, like Christian Book and Mardell's, number of the traditional homeschool sources. It's on Amazon, and we sell it directly ourselves from Castle Books, but we also have a homeschool store in our old hotel where the lobby used to be. And but spellingpower.com will get them to an introductory video, information about all the different little products that are available. If you like everything already done, there's a super pack and there's a, a basic pack. So you really can choose based on what you're comfortable spending and what you think you need. Um, And once you buy Spelling Power, it's the only book you need for your whole family, um, which is convenient. We have a lot of missionaries that like to take it on the mission field because it's one book for all their kids. It's less packing. So, and then comes with a teacher's resource site that allows you to print out like the daily forms and so forth. And some people only use that when they suddenly discover they don't have any pages left in their student record book. And others, that's all they do is print them out and have them in a little booklet of their own. So we try to adjust to all the different homeschoolers' needs.
Absolutely. And it's available worldwide, and you have different spellings that can be used in Canada or other countries besides just America. Is that correct?
Yes, we put the British or Canadian spellings in parentheses behind the words. So, like if we put neighbor, it would be spelled the American way, and then in parentheses, the British way, which covers England, Canada, um, Australia, and most countries that teach English use the British way, not the American way. And I could
Yes.
do a whole workshop on why we have different spellings, but it's not the time. It's in the book, actually, under the research. There's a whole chapter on the research. It used to be at the front of the book because I thought parents needed to know all the research that went into every step of spelling power. But it was one of those things that kind of bogged down new users, so we put it in the appendix. Um, so it actually doesn't get read as much as I'd like it to, because I think it helps to know why every step is laid out the way that I have it laid out. But
Well,
it's there, and
Beverly,
there's resources online too.
thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing everything about how you created this, why you created it, and how to implement it in our homeschools. And for those of you watching, thank you for tuning in. And I just want to let you know that we are in the middle of summer and we have a shark event going on over at schoolhouseteachers.com. If you are not a member of schoolhouseteachers.com, you are able to sign up before August 31st, 2023. If you sign up before then you will receive a tote of your choice with a magazine shipped right to your house if you live in the US. And if you are one of the first 100 to sign up, then you will be able to receive two. So you can give a friend a bag and a magazine, a back issue collectible edition of the Yale Schoolhouse magazine as well. So thank you so much, Beverly. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Have a wonderful day. Bye.